Why the Arabs revolted against the Ottoman Empire 1916–1918. Part 1. The Empire and the Desert. Opening scene, sweeping aerial shot of endless desert dunes, the burning sun rising over the Arabian Peninsula. Faint echoes of camel bells and distant prayer calls. At the dawn of the 20th century, the Ottoman Empire stretched across 3 continents, from the gates of Vienna to the sands of Arabia. Once, it had been the envy of the world, a vast, multicultural realm guided by the Sultan in Istanbul, Caliph of Islam's faithful. Cut to Istanbul skyline, the domes of Hagia Sophia and Topkapi Palace glowing in morning light. But beneath the grandeur, the empire was crumbling. Centuries of wars, corruption, and nationalist uprisings had weakened its grip. The Ottomans were known as the sick man of Europe, and the vultures of colonial ambition were circling. Music deepens, slow montage of European empires dividing maps of the Middle East. France and Britain coveted the oil-rich sands of the Arabian Peninsula. Germany sought alliance with the Sultan. And amid the clash of empires, the Arabs began to dream of something unthinkable: freedom. Cut to the Hejaz region, Mecca, Medina, Jeddah. Caravan traders, tribesmen, pilgrims along the ancient routes. For centuries, the Arab tribes of the Hejaz had served the pilgrimage routes to the holy cities. Though loyal to the Ottoman Caliph, they resented Istanbul's distant rule. Taxes were heavy, governors corrupt, and Turkish officials treated the Arabs as inferiors. Visual cue: Ottoman troops marching through the Hejaz, clashing with Bedouin tribes. But one man, Sharif Hussein ibn Ali, the guardian of Mecca, would become the symbol of Arab defiance. A descendant of the Prophet Muhammad, he ruled the Hejaz under Ottoman authority, but his loyalty was fading. Scene shifts, interior, Mecca palace at night. Sharif Hussein writes by candlelight. The sound of wind outside. Sharif Hussein reading aloud softly. If the Turks abandon faith for ambition, if they forsake justice for tyranny, then the sons of Arabia will rise not as subjects but as a nation. Hussein watched with unease as the Ottoman Empire fell under the control of the Young Turks, a nationalist movement from Istanbul that sought to Turkify the empire. Cut to Ankara and Istanbul, scenes of Young Turk parades, speeches about unity. Their vision of power alarmed the Arabs, who saw their language, culture, and identity suppressed in the name of Ottoman nationalism. By 1914, resentment had become resistance. Scene: World War I erupts. Explosions, soldiers marching, maps showing Ottoman alliances. When war engulfed Europe in 1914, the Ottomans chose their side, aligning with Germany and Austria-Hungary. The Caliph in Istanbul declared a holy war, calling Muslims across the empire to fight the Allies. But in the deserts of Arabia, not everyone answered. Sound FX, wind over dunes, distant gunfire fades into silence. The British saw an opportunity, a chance to shatter the Ottoman hold on the Middle East by igniting an Arab revolt from within. Cut to Cairo, British officers in uniforms, telegraph cables clicking. In secret rooms of Cairo's intelligence offices, British officials began to send letters that would change history. Their recipient, Sharif Hussein of Mecca. Scene fades into dimly lit room, Hussein's sons, Ali, Abdullah, and Faisal, reading the messages. Abdullah: they promise independence, an Arab kingdom, free from Turkish rule. Faisal grimly: and yet, can we trust them? The British do not fight for our freedom. They fight for their empire. Between 1915 and 1916, a secret correspondence began, the famous Hussein-McMahon letters, in which Britain promised Arab independence in exchange for revolt against the Turks. Cut to British High Commissioner Sir Henry McMahon, writing at his desk in Cairo. The words of these letters lit a spark in the desert, a spark that would soon ignite the Arab revolt. Closing scene, slow pan across the Arabian dunes as storm clouds gather. In the sands of the Hejaz, the drums of rebellion began to sound. Tribes gathered, banners were raised, and whispers of freedom spread from camp to camp. The old empire was about to face a new kind of war, one born not of soldiers but of dreams. Why the Arabs revolted against the Ottoman Empire 1916–1918. Part 2. The promises of Cairo. Opening scene, early morning mist over the Nile. The skyline of Cairo glows beneath the rising sun. Inside the British residency, telegraphs click, maps of the Middle East cover the walls. As Europe descended into the chaos of World War I, the British Empire turned its gaze southward, to the deserts of Arabia. The Ottoman Empire stood as an ally of Germany, threatening the Suez Canal, Britain's lifeline to India. The British needed allies within the Ottoman ranks, and they found one in the Hejaz. Cut to British officers in khaki uniforms seated around a polished table. Cigarette smoke fills the air. Sir Henry McMahon: "If we can bring the Sharif of Mecca to our side, the Turks will be isolated. The Arabs will rise for their own freedom, and the Ottomans will lose their most sacred lands." Thus began one of history's most consequential correspondences, the letters exchanged between Sir Henry McMahon, the British High Commissioner in Egypt, and Sharif Hussein ibn Ali, the ruler of the Hejaz. Scene: Mecca, 1915. Sharif Hussein sits in a dim chamber, his sons beside him. A messenger delivers a sealed letter bearing the British insignia. In these letters, Britain promised recognition of Arab independence, a vast kingdom stretching from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean. In return, Hussein would lead an uprising against the Turks. Abdullah reading aloud: "The British government is prepared to recognize and support the independence of the Arabs within the regions demanded by your Majesty." Hussein quietly: "So, they offer us freedom. Yet freedom given is not freedom earned." He folds the letter and looks toward the desert horizon. Hussein was cautious. He distrusted European powers, but he distrusted the Turks even more. For years, he had watched the young Turk government in Istanbul crush Arab autonomy and silence their voices. Cut to Istanbul, 1915. Ottoman officials discuss strategy. Enver Pasha: "The Arabs must be reminded of their duty to the Caliph. Those who speak of independence are traitors to Islam." The young Turk leadership, Enver Pasha, Talat Pasha, and Jamal Pasha, sought to modernize and centralize the empire. But in doing so, they alienated the Arab provinces. Turkish became the language of government, Arab officers were demoted, intellectuals were arrested. Scene: Damascus, 1915. Ottoman soldiers march prisoners through the streets. In Syria and Lebanon, Jamal Pasha's rule turned brutal. Dozens of Arab nationalists were executed on charges of treason. Their deaths, however, only fueled the growing fire of resistance. Transition: sandstorm rolling across the Hejaz, symbolizing growing unrest. Back in the Hejaz, Sharif Hussein's resolve hardened. With each new letter from Cairo, his ambitions grew. He wanted not just independence, but a united Arab kingdom, one that would restore the glory of the caliphs and the early Islamic world. Faisal to his father: "Father, the tribes are ready. They whisper of rebellion. But if we act, we must not fail. The Turks are many, and their guns are strong. Hussein: then we shall strike where they least expect. Not for Britain, nor for gold, but for Arabia." Scene: Cairo, British intelligence headquarters. Meanwhile, the British were not entirely sincere in their promises. Unknown to Sharif Hussein, they were already negotiating secret deals with other powers, dividing the Middle East even before the revolt began. Cut to dimly lit meeting room, 1916. Mark Sykes Britain and François-Georges Picot France draw lines on a map. Mark Sykes: "This line, from Acre to Kirkuk. North for France, south for Britain." Picot: "Agreed. The Arabs may rise if they wish, but their lands will fall under our spheres of influence." The infamous Sykes-Picot Agreement, a secret pact to carve up the Arab world, would one day shatter Hussein's dreams and sow the seeds of mistrust for generations. Scene: night in Mecca, 1916. Sharif Hussein and his sons gather around a campfire. The desert wind howls. A messenger from Cairo arrives, handing over the final letter. Abdullah reading: "The British government confirms that it supports Arab independence and will provide weapons, gold, and advisors when the time comes." The message was clear. Britain's word had been given, at least on paper. The Arabs would rise, and Britain would help. Sharif Hussein stands, staring into the flames. Hussein: "Then it begins. The chains of 400 years shall be broken by the sons of the desert." But in London and Paris, men in suits drew boundaries in ink. In the Hejaz, men with rifles would draw them in blood. Closing scene: slow pan over the dunes, torchlight flickering in the distance. The promises of Cairo had set the stage. Alliances were forged in letters, not trust. Soon, the first shots of the Arab Revolt would echo through the desert, and the world would take notice. Why the Arabs revolted against the Ottoman Empire, 1916–1918. Part 3 The Spark of Revolt. Opening scene, dawn over the Red Sea. The sky glows blood orange. In the port city of Jeddah, Ottoman soldiers patrol the harbor. Far beyond, in the silent desert, Arab tribes prepare for war. Narrator, voiceover. June, 1916. After months of secret preparation, Sharif Hussein of Mecca made his decision. The promises of Cairo were written in ink, now they would be tested in fire. Cut to Mecca, Sharif Hussein in prayer, surrounded by his sons, Ali, Abdullah, and Faisal. Hussein, quietly. For centuries, we have served the empire. But the empire has forgotten us. Today, Arabia awakens. He rises, places his hand upon a rifle beside him. Hussein. By God, the land of the Arabs shall belong to the Arabs once more. It was not an easy choice. The Ottoman Empire was still the seat of the Caliph, the protector of Islam. To rise against it meant to risk being branded a traitor to the faith. Music swells, low drums echo like distant thunder. But for Sharif Hussein, this was not rebellion against Islam, it was rebellion against tyranny. Scene, the Hejaz, June 10, 1916. The first gunshots ring out near Mecca's Ottoman garrison. At dawn, the Arab tribes struck. Under the banner of the Hashemite family, a white flag bearing a red sword, the revolt began. Shots of battle, dust clouds, rifles firing, Ottoman soldiers returning fire from the city walls. The Ottoman defenders fought fiercely, but the tribes had numbers, speed, and knowledge of the land. Within days, the holy city of Mecca was in Arab hands. Cut to Sharif Hussein standing atop the walls of Mecca, the new flag waving in the wind. For the first time in 400 years, the Hejaz was free from Ottoman rule. Scene, British headquarters, Cairo. Telegram operators rush through corridors. Officer. Message from the Hejaz, Sir, the Arabs have risen. Mecca has fallen. In Cairo, the British celebrated. They had gained what they hoped for, a rebellion to divide the Ottoman forces. Gold, rifles, and ammunition were quickly sent across the Red Sea to aid the revolt. Cut to crates marked, British government, being loaded onto small boats heading toward Arabia. But the revolt was fragile. The Ottoman army still held strongholds in Medina, Taif, and along the railway lines that connected Arabia to Syria. If the Turks counterattacked swiftly, the uprising could be crushed. Scene, Medina, Ottoman headquarters. The commander, Fakhri Pasha, addresses his troops. Fakhri Pasha. Brothers. The traitors in Mecca called themselves free men, but they are puppets of the infidels. We will defend Medina until our last breath. Medina, the second holiest city in Islam, became the symbol of Ottoman defiance. Fakhri Pasha swore to hold it at all costs, and he did, for more than 2 years, even after the empire itself began to crumble. Shots of Medina's walls, Turkish artillery, and determined soldiers. His resistance tied down thousands of Arab and British-backed fighters, preventing them from advancing north. Scene, Faisal ibn Hussein, the youngest son, inspects his men outside Mecca. While his father commanded from Mecca, Faisal emerged as the true field leader. Charismatic, intelligent, and humble, he inspired both tribal warriors and foreign allies. Faisal. We do not fight for gold, nor for the favor of kings. We fight so that our children may call this desert their own. It was Faisal who would soon meet a man destined to become a legend, an unlikely British officer whose name would echo through history, T.E. Lawrence. Scene, Cairo, 1916. A young British intelligence officer studies maps of Arabia. Lawrence murmuring, a war in the desert, strange people, vast lands, impossible dreams. Perhaps that's where I belong. Transition, montage of Arab tribes uniting, British advisors arriving, and Ottoman trains patrolling the Hejaz railway. The Arab revolt spread across the Hejaz. Taif fell after weeks of siege. The tribes advanced toward Medina, cutting rail lines, ambushing Ottoman supply trains. But unity among the tribes was fragile. Cut to council tent, leaders argue around a map. Tribal sheikh, why should we fight the Turks in the north? Our lands are free already. Another. Because if Medina stands, the Turks will return. Hussein's challenge was not only military, it was political. The tribes were bound by loyalty, not by nation. To unite them under one banner was a task as difficult as conquering an empire. Scene, Lawrence arrives in Jeddah, meeting British officers and Arab envoys. To help organize the revolt, the British sent advisors, men who knew the language, the culture, and the strategy of irregular warfare. Among them was T.E. Lawrence, a scholar of archaeology turned soldier. Lawrence to a British officer. If we are to aid these people, we must understand them. They fight not for flags or treaties, but for honor. Lawrence's insight would soon transform the revolt into a new kind of war, one fought not by armies but by tribes striking from the desert shadows. Closing scene, desert night, campfires burning, the new Arab flag rippling in the wind. The spark had been lit. Mecca was free, and the Ottoman grip was slipping. Yet for all their early victories, the Arabs still faced an empire that refused to die. Ahead lay the long, brutal struggle for Medina, and the rise of a new hero in the desert.